When I look back now, at 80, the story of my life doesn't unfold in decades. It reveals itself in moments. Moments like lanterns, lit gently and deliberately along a long winding path. Each one flickering with meaning, not always bright, not always joyful, but always real. I was born in 1945 into a world still trembling from the echoes of war. The Second World War had just ended. Hiroshima had burned. My parents, immigrants from Hong Kong, welcomed me into a one-room apartment in San Francisco's Chinatown with hope they could not afford to say out loud. I was their peace child, born in a time when peace was a prayer more than a promise. I learned English slowly, with a thick accent I worked hard to smooth, but I never lost my Cantonese. I spoke it with reverence, first to my parents, then to my children, then to my grandchildren, even as it sometimes came out tangled with English syllables. My voice in both languages carried generations. I watched my parents love through labor. Their tenderness showed not in kisses or soft words, but in sacrifice. In rice bowls, always filled for me, in nights they spent sewing or unloading crates, in shoes they patched instead of replaced. I understood later that their silence was not a lack of love, but its deepest form. I became the first in our family to attend college. I walked onto the campus at UC Berkeley both terrified and determined. I studied economics and history because I wanted to understand both the money we never had and the past we were never taught. I married a man who looked like the world but sounded like home. Leslie Lin, half German, half Cantonese, fluent in both sarcasm and sincerity. He called me Ellen when I needed a spotlight and Hoi Lam when I needed comfort. With him, I built a life stitched with equal parts tradition and invention. We raised 3 children: Lydia, fierce, articulate, endlessly driven; Erin, quiet, kind, observant; Jay, wild-hearted, brave, and possibly herself. They were never the same, but each, in their own way, taught me how to be a mother. I held their hands through scraped knees and rebellious teen years, through goodbyes at college and homecomings with their own stories. I watched them become versions of themselves I could have never written, but always prayed for. I worked in rooms where my name was mispronounced, where people assumed I was the assistant or the quiet one, where ambition was a risk and silence was survival. I stayed. I learned. I grew louder, not with volume, but with clarity. I built a career one number, one decision, one quiet triumph at a time. I buried my parents with incense, joss paper, and a heart full of quiet gratitude. I mourned them in meals I cooked the way they taught me, in dreams where they visited, wordlessly. I held Leslie's hand as cancer crept into our life, first slowly, then all at once. I became a widow with love still blooming, but no longer a place to plant it. Until the grandchildren came, Alfonso, Mikasa, Ash. They gave me new soil, new mornings, new reasons to laugh. I lived through the moon landing, the civil rights movement, Vietnam, Nixon, Tiananmen, the rise of Silicon Valley, the fall of the Berlin Wall. I watched towers fall and watched communities rise. I faced the stillness of COVID lockdowns and the noise of generational change. Through it all, I was both an insider and an outsider in the country I call home. I learned how to straddle 2 worlds and how to build a third. Now, at 80, if you asked me to define my legacy in a single word, it wouldn't be success, or perseverance, or resilience, even though I've lived them all. It would be this family, not just by blood, but by love, by memory, by meals shared, by the stories we tell at the table, by the way we hold on to each other, even when the world asks us to let go. Family is not what I came from. It's what I created. And in that, I see my truest reflection